the fact that all of this prep is going into a 5-minute sun blackout that lasts in totality, I believe, only approximately 2.5 minutes. It just takes 5 minutes for the entire pattern to cross the United States. I'm extremely concerned about this April 8th date, so much so that my intuition is screaming to stay home and stay inside and just be safe. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this week's Crashes in Taxes. I am your host for this podcast, Rebecca Walser. For those of you that are have not joined Crashes in Taxes before, I run an SEC registered RIA, and that's a registered investment advisor. I have my global MBA from the London School of Economics. I am a tax lawyer with a tax specialization from New York University School of Law, NYU, and I have my law degree, obviously, from the University of Florida. I run a practice of the employees that's a boutique wealth management practice with a tax lens focus, as well as legacy and long-term legacy and wealth planning. Today's Crashes in Taxes is going to be very highly unusual outside of my normal wheelhouse. But because I am so multidisciplinary, meaning that I'm in the law spheres, I'm in the global economic spheres, with connections to C-suites globally, obviously through my affiliation with Chaussee out of Paris, which is the #1 global business school that my program was through, as well as LSE, London School of Economics, and NYU in the United States. So I am going, because I'm exposed to a lot of information and these multiple disciplines, a lot of times I start to see patterns of things that are unusual or outside of the norm, outside of the character of what we're used to seeing. And I want to bring those to you so that you can as well see these disruptions and these things. So everyone is aware that we are having a total solar eclipse over the United States on Monday, April the 8th. And it is to occur over the Midwest, I believe somewhere in the 2 p.m. Eastern Seaboard hour. I know based in Tampa, my practice here, we have a national practice that's based in Tampa, our corporate office. And based in Tampa, we're expecting to see about a 60% obfuscation of the sun with the moon, and because we're not in the direct line of sight. So I'd like to go ahead and get started with some slides and kind of walk you through the odd things that I'm picking up that I'm bringing to you today. Okay, so this is a report from NASA. You can see that it is February 22nd of this year, 2024, and it's a solar cycle 25, and it says the sun releases 2 strong solar flares. The sun emitted 2 strong solar flares, that first one peaking at 6:07 at p.m. Eastern on February 21, and the second one at 1:32 a.m. on February 22. So I want you to start to see that we're starting to get a lot of communication this year, really last year into this year, about solar flares. And so that's a concept that I'm going to be discussing with you as well as the solar eclipse. So this is an article out of Science Fix. You can see Science Fix here. Our weekly feature offers you a summary of the top global science stories of the week with links to their sources. And this is an article from March 31, after a solar interruption and a severe geomagnetic storm and aurora in the sky. So this is talking about a very specific solar flare that did occur and what happened and what you could actually see via the sun if you were observing it. And then we have this Guardian article, and it's dated, and we can't really see the date from this, but it's recent, and it says NASA images show amazing solar flare that caused radio interference on Earth. Now, here's where we're going to start picking up the point that I'm trying to give to you guys. So we're starting to notice that we're starting to get some technological disruptions from these solar events. And you can see here, I zoomed into the articles. I wanted to read this to you. NASA has released images of what it says is the most powerful solar flare in 6 years, a fiery flash on the sun's surface, um, 93 million miles away, that knocked out science, some radio communication on Earth for a short time on Thursday. And we're going to fast forward, and I really want you to understand this right here. This is the point. NASA says, an X-class flare of the highest intensity with the potential to affect radio communications, electric power grids, navigation signals, which would be i.e. GPS, and poses risks to spacecraft and astronauts. And then it goes on to talk about this specific solar flare. So now we're starting to see that NASA is basically stating, and in this case, it's the Science Fix article quoting NASA, that when you have a solar flare of this magnitude or this high intensity, that it can disrupt power grids, radio communication, GPS signals, and obviously will impact spacecraft. So let's keep going. Then you can see this is a high tech article. This is from January 19th of 2023. And this is an old article. It's from a year and 3 months ago. But what I want you to see is it says breakthrough. Now solar flares can be predicted, says NASA. The volatile sun has been sparking solar flares on Earth on a regular basis, courtesy solar flares, CME, solar, wind, and more. If powerful enough, these can be very dangerous for the power grid, satellites, even mobile phones. So last January of 2023, NASA made the announcements that they are now able to predict solar flares, and that different levels of solar flares, if intense enough, can actually disrupt our electrical grid, our GPS satellite navigation, and even our cell phones, as well as radio communications. So the groundwork is kind of being laid here for if we have a nice big solar flare, these things can, and our technological way of life will be interrupted. Now I want to come over to I'm going to take myself off of this one so you guys can see this in full. This is 5 different articles, and there were many more actually. I only pulled these 5. These are 5 different articles, as you can see, from Newsweek, all within the last 6 weeks, that are specifically talking about the Monday, April 8th event. And the first one I want to highlight to you, March 16th, map shows warning for people to stock up on food ahead of solar eclipse. In that article, NASA talks about the dissension on these states that are going to have a direct view of the full eclipse, and that basically it's going to create a lot of chaos and havoc, and that people in those areas should be stocked up with food, even pet food, all kinds of things. So I thought that was odd, because from the beginning to the end, when the eclipse enters the lower 48 and then leaves and goes out by Nova Scotia and Canada, it's about a 5-minute thing, and with the largest point being about a little over 2 minutes in duration of complete and total blackout. So normally you wouldn't expect, with the sun only being disrupted for a few minutes, massive potential preparation around this kind of event. But look at Newsweek. You have another March 22nd article, full list of stores closing during solar eclipse 2024. You have another article here, looks like it's March 16th as well, National Guard to be deployed for solar eclipse 2024, Newsweek. And you have another article here, police deploy emergency plan for solar eclipse, also from Newsweek. And then finally, the other one I included, solar eclipse warning for flights as major airports caught in path. So Newsweek has multiple, there were more than this, articles about the disruption and the preparation potentially for that disruption for this coming Monday, April the 8th. I went back to kind of look for the 2017 eclipse that we had, and I didn't see nearly the amount of pre-planning preparation and announcements from articles that we're seeing with this 2024. So that stood out to me as really interesting and unique. And remember, NASA just announced at the beginning of 2023 in January that they now can predict solar flares. So we know we have that. All right. Now you can see this is a Daily Mail article. Obviously, that's a UK publication. And you can see it is dated here. The date is on the next page, but it is dated. Actually, it's right here. It's Tuesday, April 2nd. That is today. And you can see next. So this was actually dated in March. Next month's solar eclipse could cause widespread cell phone disruptions for millions of Americans, officials warn. More than 3.7 million people are set to visit states along the solar eclipse path. Officials are preparing for cellular disruptions due to a strain on local networks. Solar eclipse will block out the sun for over 30 million people. That is a country of about 340 people. So that is, about 10% basically. So we can now see that we're preparing for cell phone disruptions, for National Guard prevention, for police intervention, and we're being told that it could disrupt our communications. Now we're going to move on to a Vice article. And this article was a recent article that talks about new spoofing attacks resulting in total navigation failure have been occurring above the Middle East for months, which is highly significant for airline safety. So we're starting now to see GPS disruption with commercial flights. And what does that look like? Now, this looks like it's nefarious and it's intentional. It's not necessarily weather related. Then you can see here's another Newsweek article. This is March 25th of this year. Planes hit by mystery GPS jamming across Europe. In fact, we did get reports last week, the last week of March, that hundreds of planes across Europe last week did have their GPS jammed. So this is extremely scary and highly irregular, and something that we are detecting patterns of GPS disruption, navigation interruption, and again, this event. Then you have this Politico article, which is right here. Airlines report GPS signal jamming. Russia gets the blame. GPS interference is hitting aircraft navigation systems in the Baltics as well as other conflict regions. So obviously we have geopolitical conflict going on right now in the Middle East, and obviously Ukraine and Russia. NATO's so heavily involved. And so you have this as well. And then the final slide that I wanted to share with you today is a slide that I've been sharing for over a year now. And it's basically the thread on record of NASA saying that if we had some sort of disruption, we could have an internet apocalypse that could leave us without internet for months. So all of this together combined to state that what I'm seeing is a consistent relaying of information that April 8th could be some type of solar interruption. Normally, with a solar eclipse, we would not expect a solar interruption. However, with all of the things that NASA has been putting out about solar flares, I actually have a paper that shows that there are a probability of another solar flare that seriously damages our electrical grid is about 100%. They don't know the time frame, but they know there is a 100% probability that we will have a solar flare that affects our national grid. So between the preparation work that is happening, all of the alerts that we've gotten, and I'm not talking about the AT&T data breach where 73 million Americans, all of their private information was sent out. AT&T changed the passwords on 7 million of those 73 million automatically themselves. But you obviously do have a big data breach of AT&T. That aside, the fact that we have cell phone providers sort of pre-announcing that cell phone communications could be disrupted, the fact that we saw a solar flare in February that disrupted radio communications, the fact that now NASA is telling us as of January of 2023 that they can now predict solar flares, the fact that all of this prep is going into a 5-minute sun blackout that lasts in totality, I believe, only approximately 2.5 minutes. It just takes 5 minutes for the entire pattern to cross the United States. I'm extremely concerned about this April 8th date, so much so that my intuition is screaming to stay home and stay inside and just be safe. And certainly, I will direct you to use your common sense and do what you want. I have bought the solar eclipse glasses for myself and my family so we could actually observe it. We're only going to get a 60% obfuscation here in Tampa, like I mentioned earlier. But at this point, I think I am going to just hunker down and kind of pretend like it's a hurricane day, which in America and in Florida, we have them all the time. We're really used to them. And I would just encourage you to do the same. If Newsweek is doing 5, 6, 10 articles over a very truncated amount of time about a solar eclipse that is being very well planned. I mean, Newsweek's article is telling you to buy pet food, to buy supplies, to buy. I mean, it sounds to me like what we do for hurricane preparation and for stores to close, for not to have access to things, and it just seems to make logical sense to me with all of these dots that I'm connecting in multiple different disciplines that multidisciplinary. I see all of them sort of kind of warning about April 8th in the same way. And it does ring alarm bells for me. So for me and my family, we are going to just be really safe and just not participate and stay in at home and inside. But for you, you obviously do what you feel is right for you and your family. I just really wanted to bring a quick, short little crashes and taxes to you and bring all of these data points that seem like they're disconnected, but they're so close in time. They're so close in the announcements of new, technological advancements like NASA being able to predict solar flares, and then coming out and saying there's 100% probability. Apparently, we had a solar flare in the 1800s that took down the entire telegraph system, and that system took an entire year to rebuild. So you could see how NASA could kind of predict that we could have a disruption of the grid electrically, or we could have a disruption of the grid that causes, internet cell phone service to not be able to be leveraged for months. You can see how all of these things are sort of coming and weaving into this quilt of they're trying to tell us something could be coming, but they're just not outright saying it because probably they can't say it for a fact until it's happened. So all of those dots connected together, I just would recommend that you really use some common sense for Monday and just stay safe. We can watch it on our TV in the house and enjoy it and be safe because I don't want my family out there without the ability to use their cell phones or to communicate, especially in the event of some kind of electrical grid disruption, which would be in our technologically advanced society that electricity is in and everything runs on electricity would be quite a problem if our grid went down. So that is kind of a very crazy, unique situation. I will pull back to economics and close out with economics. We did get PCE data on Friday that was pretty sticky. But the bigger news for the week is the ISM manufacturers report coming in at 50.3, which basically anything 50 and above means expansion. And so when you look at the ISM, you might say it's really, it's kind of a double whammy because on the one hand, the report is strong enough that you could say the Fed might not need again to cut rates. We had Governor Christopher Waller again last week state that these are not the economic conditions under which rate cuts would be appropriate. So we still see very hawkish sentiment coming out of the Fed. And anytime we get really good economic data or just even good economic data, doesn't have to be really good, you see that the Fed is in a more difficult position to justify rate cuts. And that's why yields are going back up today. And so what you'll see is that the Federal Reserve is got less now than a 50% probability, according to CME Watch, of a June rate cut. So the probability of the June rate cut has gone down now below 50%. And that's a problem because the market is still counting on 3 rate cuts for 2024, which would be if they are approximately 25 basis points each, which is kind of the consensus, then we'd have a total of 75 basis points. But I need to remind you, this is already downshifted from the market's expectation in December. I was in New York when the FOMC meeting occurred, and we had that pause. We had the dot plot showing 3 projected cuts. The market priced in, and I mean instantaneously, the algos and the machines priced in 6 rate cuts for 150 basis points. We now are in April of 2024. We're getting decent economic data from the ISM manufacturers, but I would say decent is not really great because when you look into the weeds, just like you have to do with every economic report right now in 2024, 2023, when you look at the weeds, you can see that the future orders is not keeping up with the demand. So even though the overall report was expansionary, you don't see that pending orders are going to keep up with the demand at expansion rates. So it's still truly a weak report. It's just not negative. It's not contracting like it has been. For 16 straight months, we've had contractionary ISM manufacturing data. This is the first positive ISM we've had in 16 months. Again, it's barely expansionary. At anything above 50 is expansionary. So 50.3 is expansionary. It is a positive. It is only going to make it more difficult for the Fed to cut in April. And this is why yields are rising. And you can see that the actual probability of a June rate cut has dropped probability-wise dramatically. So if we don't get a June cut, then it's going to be probably really hard to get the 75 basis points that the market really wants this year. And again, the question is, does the Fed even think that we need it? Now, if we have an electrical grid disruption, if we have planes that have their GPS jammed, if we have a solar flare that takes down the internet or the electrical grid or a combination thereof, then I would say that, yeah, we would have some economic disruption and the Fed could turn very dovish very quickly. So that aside, right now, the data is so mixed that we just don't see how the Fed is going to justify a lot of cuts very quickly. And that's according to the Fed themselves. Now, we do get the jobs numbers on Friday for March, and I'm sure that the BLS will once again have a really great number that will then contract the next month. In January, we had the highest report in months, 353,000. However, the next month they downgraded that and they took away 124,000 jobs. So it wasn't 353, it was 353 minus 124. So yes, I expect the BLS numbers to come in great on Friday if that will make the Fed's June rate cut even lower probability unless we get some kind of surprise in the jobs market. And if you look at the Fred data and you look at the advancing claims and continuing claims and you look at average and total wages that are going down, even though wage per hour is going up, wages hours are getting cut. So total wages going down. And so I don't know that we're going to get a good report, but if we do, that's going to make the case for Fed rates high cuts in June even more difficult to accomplish. So that is a very fast crashes in taxes for this week. Very unique, different non-economic topic, but I do hope that you take it with some seriousness and plan accordingly. And I hope you guys all have a great week. We'll be back next week. Take care, everybody. Hey.